My name is William Cooper. I have been, for a number of years now, attempting to wake up the American people. I've succeeded in waking up the Japanese so far, and I'm still working on the American people, but we're making progress. I was reared in a military family. My father's a retired Air Force colonel, lives in the state of Texas. He was a command pilot. While I was a child, I heard stories that the pilots would tell, sitting around the kitchen table, usually with a glass of bourbon late at night, talking about UFOs and Foo Fighters that they had seen during World War II, and other strange things that they ran into in the air. And I don't mean that literally. When I left home, I went into the United States Air Force. I had intentionally, or I had originally wanted to go into the Navy. I had a great love for the water, for the sea. I loved the books and stories that I read about the Navy and ships, and was mesmerized by all that. But you see, I had a problem. If I even looked at a boat, I got terribly seasick. I even got sick riding in a car. That's how bad this was for me. I had a chronic motion problem. If I went to a carnival and got on anything that went around, that was hospital time. I mean, that's how bad it was. So I went in the Air Force and stood in the Navy, thinking that that would cure my sense of adventure. In the Air Force, I was trained in as an aircraft and missile and hydraulic technician. I worked on B-52 bombers, KC-135 aircraft, and Minuteman missiles. So, up until the time that I left the Air Force, I was thoroughly and fully acquainted with the state-of-the-art of our technology as far as the aerospace industry was concerned. In the Air Force, I met sergeants, usually enlisted men, older guys, and when we were out in the town drinking and carousing and raising hell, sometimes late into the night, when we had failed in our primary mission, which was to find a young lady, we would begin to tell stories and lie to each other. And they would tell me about having participated in recovery of crashed extraterrestrial spaceships that had come to rest somewhere on this earth. Because of the situation that we were in when these stories were told, I never did believe any of it at all, to tell you the truth, and quite frankly, wasn't interested. I was interested in Susie or Mabel or whatever her name might have been at the time, because I was a young man. This was between the time that I was 18 and 22. I left the Air Force with an honorable discharge, served for a few months in the Air Force Reserve, and then enlisted in the United States Navy. It didn't work. I had to go in the Navy. Seasick or not, I was going to do it. And I had been reared with the teaching and the idea that to serve your country was the best and noblest thing that any man could ever do. When I went in the Navy, I volunteered for submarines and was attached to the USS Tiger SS-416, which was an old World War II diesel boat, diesel electric, which at the time that I went aboard was in the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, cleanly cut in half. And there was an army of welders roaming all over it, welding, and sparks were flying. And I thought I had made a terrible mistake when I saw this. But I didn't. I had a wonderful time on board the Tyro, served with a great bunch of guys. But some strange things happened to me while I was on board that vessel. The strangest was that during a transit on the surface between the Portland-Seattle area, where we had gone to participate in what they call a Rose Festival up there, we were the tour boat. We were the boat that everybody comes down on Sunday and crawls through the submarine. On the way back to the Pearl Harbor submarine base, I saw, as the port lookout, a huge, tremendous, disc-shaped craft rise up out of the Pacific Ocean, tumble on its axis, and disappear into the clouds. And I was dumbfounded, astounded. I'd heard stories of these things all my life, but didn't believe in it. And it demonstrated a level of technology that is far beyond anything that I could conceive of at that particular time. Bear in mind that I was on a submarine. I knew what it took to go underwater. I had served 4 years in the Air Force working on the state-of-the-art of our aerospace technology, and I knew what it took to fly through the air. What this craft did was impossible to do with our state-of-the-art technology at that time. The year that I saw this was 1966. It was the size of a Midway class aircraft carrier, which is a small carrier by modern standards, but nevertheless very large. It was metal-colored, sort of a pewter color. It did not glow like the normal accounts of UFOs that you hear. It appeared to have windows on it. It looked like a machine. It was a machine. If you can imagine a ship that traveled through the air, that's exactly what it looked like. It had things on it that ships have on it. It was incredible. I notified the officer of the deck that I had seen something approximately 15 degrees off the port bow and that I'd lost it in sea return. Sea return is something that we talk about on radar. When the radar bounces off the tops of the waves, and when you're talking about a lookout, you're talking about the sea bouncing up and down. For instance, if you lose a human being overboard in a sea, by the time you can count to 10, if the sea is moderate, you can no longer see that person in the ocean because of the effect of the waves bouncing up and down, the man going in and out of troughs and the whitecaps and so on and so forth. I wasn't going to tell the officer of the deck, whose name was Ensign Ball, that I had seen a flying saucer, not on a small boat with a 100-man crew. And a 100-man crew was during wartime. We actually had 75 men most of the time, give or take a few transfers out and people coming in. On a submarine, you live in cramped quarters with a small crew, and I can guarantee you, you don't ever want to be the odd man out. You don't want to be the loony on board the boat. You don't want to be the guy that nobody wants to stand watch with because it's crazy. So Ensign Ball looked over in that area. Also, the starboard lookout began to look in that area also because he had heard this conversation. And I didn't expect to see anything else, but if we did, I didn't want to be the only one that saw it. And we weren't looking in that direction very long when another craft, or the same craft, just like it, came down out of the clouds, tumbled again on its axis. It was like it had to perform this maneuver. Why, I don't know. But they would come down out of the clouds, tumble, and then enter the ocean. When they came out of the water, they would tumble again and then go up. It's like they could only enter or leave the water with a certain attitude. I can't explain it, don't know why, but this is what happened. We watched this repeat itself for approximately 10 minutes. The captain was called to the bridge. The chief quartermaster came to the bridge with a 35mm camera, and we observed this take place over and over again for this 10-minute period. And what I would imagine to be 10 minutes is it was a long period of time. Photographs were taken. The chief, QMC Quintero, I've never been able to remember the captain's name, and I would really rather someone else dig out the records from Washington and verify all this, which I understand some people have done, but have not made it public. And the starboard lookout, when we call it Geronimo, we all witnessed this. We were not allowed to leave the boat when we reached Pearl. In fact, we were told right after the incident happened, as the captain took the camera from the chief quartermaster, that we were not to discuss this with anyone ever in our life, not even amongst ourselves, which was very unusual. If you even worked on a top secret project, you were allowed to talk about it amongst yourself at work, but you were not supposed to talk about it anywhere else. Well, he was telling us we couldn't talk about it under any circumstances whatsoever. When we reached Pearl, we were not allowed to go ashore. None of us, not even the captain. In fact, the message had arrived on board that those who witnessed this incident were to stay on board the vessel. We were debriefed individually in the captain's stateroom by a commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence after we had arrived at Pearl. And I believe it was about 2 hours before he made his appearance on board. The gist of the debriefing was a harangue after being asked, what was it that you saw? When we answered honestly what it was that we saw, we were harangued and yelled at and screamed and threatened until, and I'm not sure really what transpired with the others in there, but we all arrived at the same conclusion that we didn't see anything. And this is what I told the commander. The captain was relieved. You could see it on his face. He was happy that I said that. The commander was happy. However, nevertheless, even though I didn't see anything, he gave me regulations and laws to read governing the disclosure of national security interests, and I had to sign a security oath saying that I would never talk about what it was that I had not seen for the rest of my life. Now, this made a big impact on my life because I knew right then and there that something was going on, and at that particular time I was convinced that we were being visited by extraterrestrials. I was sure of it. What I had seen, I was sure, could not have been built on this earth by people, by human beings. Since then, I've gone from being sure that extraterrestrials are visiting this earth back to, I don't know who the hell's doing this. And I'll explain that as we go along later. But the odds are, from the last 20 years of research that I have done, the odds are solidly with human origin. Doesn't mean that everything that we see in the sky is human. Some of them, I'm sure, are natural phenomena. Some of the things that we see in the sky may be of extraterrestrial origin. But we're going to talk about, during this time together this evening, the results of what I saw in top secret documentation when I was later attached to the Office of Naval Intelligence and assigned to the intelligence briefing team of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, and over 19 years of very thorough research, conducted not just by me, but by many people. Now, let me give you a little bit about my background since those days. When I left the Navy in December the 11th, 1975, I did so because what I had seen in these top secret documents and things that I had participated in, operations, told me that I couldn't be a part of the United States Navy anymore, and in fact couldn't be a part of the United States government anymore because the people were being deceived. I left the service 5 years before I could have retired very comfortably on your tax dollars, and if I had done that, I probably would never have spoken up or told anybody anything about what I had seen during those years, because that's how they keep people silent. If you talk, you can be prosecuted, you can be put in jail, you can be fined up to $10,000, and you can lose all pay and allowances due or ever to become due. My own father told me, sitting in his living room in Texas, he says, "Son, I'm proud of what you're doing. I've known about this all my life." Bear in mind, this is an Air Force colonel talking. He said, "I've known about this all my life, and I'm proud of what you're doing. But I can't help you because my retirement check is the only income that your mother and I have for our old age." So those of you who wonder why military people and retired people don't talk out, that's why they don't talk. They can be totally and completely devastated, wiped out overnight if they did. Now, I believe there are ways to do it, but still that fear is there. And it's an overwhelming fear. It scares the hell out of people. How many of you in here are approaching the time when you're going to have to rely on your retirement to take care of you for the rest of your life? Let's see a show of hands. If you knew, let's see a show of hands again. If you knew that you could lose that retirement check if you talked, would you talk? I think that's a good indication for the rest of you as to how these secrets are controlled. There are several ways to control people, and money is one of the primary methods of control. When I left the Navy, I became an instructor first for the Coastal School of Deep Sea Diving, and then the chief instructor. Eventually served on the board of directors. I went from there to the College of Oceaneering in Wilmington, California, where I served as the head of the deep diving mixed gas saturation diving department. It is the most prestigious commercial diving school in the world. While I was there, because many of us were ex-Navy and had served in intelligence or SEALs or in some area of the Navy where we had very high security clearances, we also trained many divers, military divers of foreign countries at that school. We trained the entire Israeli Special Forces diving team, who then went back to Israel and set up the first diving school in Israel for the military forces, and those students served as the first instructors for that school. And we did many others. We taught a contingent of divers sent to us from communist China. And you're wondering, how did that happen? I thought we were in a Cold War with communist China. Well, some of the things you're going to learn tonight are going to open your eyes and open your ears, and I hope it will open your mind to the fact that what you perceived as reality for the last 50 years has been the biggest snow job that probably has ever occurred in the history of the world. I'm going to tell you right now, what you perceive as reality is nothing more than a ride in Mr. Toad's car in Fantasyland, in Disneyland, and your e-ticket has expired. They're closing the park, folks, and you got to go outside, and you're going to see on Anaheim Boulevard some hookers standing on the corner for the first time. I stayed in education knowing that, and believing, still believing, and that's why I'm doing this, that education is a key of some kind to the future for all of us. I served as the admissions director for Aircraft Technical Institute, the assistant director for Adelphi Business College, the executive director of Adelphi Business College, the executive director of Pacific Coast Technical Institute. I was the executive director of National Technical College. I was the national marketing coordinator for United Education and Software. When I was working in these capacities, I made anywhere every single year between $60,000 and $90,000 with no sweat. When I began doing what I'm doing, my income went from between $60,000 to $90,000 a year down to absolutely nothing. To protect myself in what I'm doing, we spent literally my life savings in a mailing of information to people all over the world whom I did not know about. For the first year that I did this, I did it on my own expenses, supporting my family, traveling, not charging anyone a penny to hear what I had to say. And I hoped that I could continue that because I hoped that people understanding the importance of what I have to say would donate some small amount so that I could continue to support my family and not have to charge people money to come and hear my message. Unfortunately, that never happened. Nobody ever contributed a nickel, not once, except when Annie and I reached the rock bottom, absolute rock bottom, and everything that we had and all our accounts was stolen. Some letters began to arrive with no return address. We told no one. No one knew about this. No one knew that we were in trouble at all. From Wisconsin. And each of those envelopes had money in them. And it literally floored me because I've always believed that some higher power has had a hand in what it is that I'm doing, because I've always felt compelled to do this. And every time that I hold back or try to hold back from doing this, terrible things begin to happen. And when I begin to do this, my life smooths out, like somebody went ahead and just made sure everything was okay. It's incredible. It could be coincidence, but there's been so many coincidences in my life that I really don't believe it is. Now, the reason I gave you my background is for those of you who have never come to one of my talks before, you know who I am. You know that I'm not some guy up here that thinks he's the Wizard of Id or some Looney Tune guy. I have always been, all my life, a solid member of the establishment. I was conservative, gung-ho, brought up in a military family, Bill Cooper. I have always contributed to the community that I live in. I have always participated. I have never been a burden on anyone in my life, nor do I ever intend to be if I can help it. So that should give you something to go by when you weigh what it is that I'm going to impart to you tonight. And this is a workshop, except for the fact that we've been cut severely short on our time. I want it to be a workshop. I want some interaction here between us. But I don't want to get to the point where we're arguing semantics, or if I say something that disagrees with your religious point of view, I don't want to get into religious arguments, because that's not why we're here. I'm here to impart to you what it was that I saw in documentation many years ago, and what I've learned through 19 years of research. And I hope that that knowledge will help you in your search for the truth. And as in every lecture that I ever give, or every workshop that I ever give, or any conversation that I ever have with anyone, I don't want you to believe anything that I impart to you tonight unless you can go and verify it and confirm it from different sources. And I don't mean because somebody tells you that Bill Cooper, yeah, he was telling the truth. I mean, you've got to be able to prove it to yourself. You see, one of the reasons that we've gotten to this point, folks, is that most people are blindly believing on faith what they're told by a lot of people. A lot of people. The government, for one. Your parents, for another. And a lot of untruths have been passed down and are still being passed down from father to son, to his son, and mother to daughter, and so on and so forth. We were taught, at least when I grew up, that this was the greatest country in the world, and it could never fail, and our government could not ever do us dirty, would never lie to us. It just couldn't happen. And I'm here to tell you that it hasn't happened. For the last 40 years, our government has not been allowed to function as it was meant to function by our forefathers. It has been infiltrated and is being controlled. It has been subverted. So be very careful, because there are people in the land whose message is, our government has failed. Democracy doesn't work. The republic is not viable. The Constitution doesn't work. Must be replaced with some other form of government. You be very careful that you don't buy that. Because our government is we the people. And it will work if we want it to work, and it will fail if we want it to fail. And that's the real truth of the matter. Let's go back a long, long way. Let's go back to a group of people probably standing on the edge of a forest near a cave, probably with no clothes, or if they had clothes, they were probably animal skin. These people had made probably the first progression in what I call the ultimate state of living in divine grace. They had learned that to be alone in the forest was not good. They had banded together in a small band. They had sought out this cave for shelter, and they're living together. Some of them probably went out and hunted. Some of them probably gathered nuts and berries. Some of them, because there were women, stayed and took care of the little children. But one of them learned something that the others did not know how to do. And this person realized, whoever this person was, that if he concealed the process by which he did this act, whatever it was, from the others, that he could have the best and warmest spot in the cave to sleep, that he could have more food than everyone else, that he could probably have the woman of his choice, that he could be the king. And so he withheld knowledge from the others. This man, whoever he was, founded the Illuminati. He was the founder of what group calls itself the Guardians of the Secrets of the Ages. The men who throughout history have learned to withhold knowledge for their own gain and power, because they believe that the rest of us are not capable of understanding or using our intellect, and that we would misuse that knowledge. And so we are to be guided and herded like sheep and like cattle. This is their true feeling about the great herds or masses of people. If you believe as they do, we're herds. Now, I have been able, for the last 19 years, to come up from thinking that everything in the world stumbled along and happened when it happened, to believing that no, that can't be right because there's too much organization to it, and it very seldom ever happens in favor of the people. Very seldom. And if it were by accident, it would have to happen in our favor more often, but it doesn't. So I began to look in conspiratorial literature, in history, to find evidence of this. And I've not only found evidence, but I found proof. I found that these men existed all the way back before the ancient Temple of Wisdom in Cairo, long before the birth of Christ. And that they existed in what were called the mysteries, or the mystery schools. And that they existed in the temples as priests who used technology and knowledge, no matter how primitive it was. They used it with a superstitious people to gain and hold and control governments, people, religions throughout history. Now, for those of you who may be here wondering, uh-oh, this guy is going to come out here with some strange religion. Let me tell you that I'm not going to preach to you tonight, but we are going to talk about religion, because that's been one of the methods of controlling people throughout history. If you want to know what my own personal religion is, I'm a Christian. But I'm not the kind of Christian you see on television on Sunday morning. I believe in the Constitution completely. That is my one and only political stance, is that I am a constitutionalist. I am an American. I believe in this country. I believe that what our forefathers set up for us, they gave us all the tools to make sure that if we were capable, we could not fail. If we were not capable, we were guaranteed to fail. I believe that if the Constitution says something's okay, it is. If it says it's not, it isn't, and that's all there is to it. I'm not a Republican, Democrat, libertarian, populist, or anything else. I'm just an American, and I go through life wondering why there's no other Americans around but me. I think that's very strange. I think it's absolutely incredible myself that we have a country full of Democrats, Republicans, Libertarian, Populists, no Americans. So that's my political viewpoint. For those of you who are wondering if I'm a communist or if I'm a Democrat or if I am a follower of the Nazi movement or whatever that happens to be, I'm not. I'm just an American. What makes me different is I can guarantee you that very few of you who have ever seen a real American before, no matter what you think of yourself, if you've been manipulated into believing that you have to be a Democrat or a Republican, if you have to call yourself a liberal or you're a conservative, then you stopped being an American when you made that decision, because there is no such thing. If you believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, then you're an American. If you believe anything else, you're not. It's as simple as that, because that document is America. If you don't believe me, tear it up and throw it in the trash can and see how long this country exists. America is that document, and it is nothing else other than that document. So if you believe in this country, you must believe in that document. Otherwise, you're believing in something else. I'm not against that. If the majority of the people in this country don't believe in the Constitution and want to get something else, then it is in the Constitution a method by which we can do that. And if we exercise it legally and lawfully through the Constitution, that's okay too. But when we try to go through the back door, no, it's not. We're being subverted. The Constitution is being destroyed, is in the process of being relegated to the trash can, and most Americans don't even understand that. These men who made up the mystery schools, the guardians of the secrets of the ages, the structure of their organizations always exist in a pyramidal form, with the majority of members on the bottom rung, and each rung requiring degrees of initiation, with a very small group at the top controlling this gigantic number of people below them, and they are used to gain a consensus of opinion by which these men control the society. They exist, many different names, many different occupations. At times they appear to oppose each other because they practice Hegelian conflict resolution. Thesis, antithesis, the clash between the two results in synthesis, which is always where they wanted to get to begin with. But to get there without you realizing that they're the ones who manipulated you there, they divide you up into opposing groups: Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Socialist, Communist, and they cause you to fight with each other. They are the ones who create the problem that will give them the solution that they want. But it is you conflicting with each other that brings about that solution, that synthesis. And in that respect, they're absolutely right. We are no better than cattle, and we are stupid because we don't even realize that we're being manipulated in that manner. And this occurs all the time. Their symbol is always the triangle with the eye, the all-seeing eye. This is their identification mark to each other. And most people don't understand it and don't realize that our forefathers belonged to this secret group of men. They were members of this group that I call the Illuminati, simply because most people who study these things understand the goals of the Illuminati and what it means. Their goal, they believe, is in the best interest of all humanity. And we'll go into that a little bit more along the line. They believe that they're doing the right thing. They believe that the end justifies the means, They believe that they are the only ones on this world with truly mature minds. And while they understand the literal, esoteric truths and are able to communicate directly with God, we are only giving the exoteric interpretation. And we kneel at a stone altar that can neither hear nor talk back to us. This is what they believe. They believe that we are cattle who do not use our intellect, and thus our stakes on the table by choice and consent for those who do use their intellect. And my goal, I have a couple of goals. One is I do not ever want to make another prediction that turns out to be 100% accurate, because that will mean I'm succeeding. In other words, I want to be a failure at predicting. Number two, I want to wake you up to the point where you can stand in front of a mirror and say with no hesitation, I've been stupid all my life, and I'm never going to be stupid again, and that you will begin to use your intellect so that we can control our destiny, because if we don't, a small group of men meeting in secret will. Make no mistake about it, they will. And the only way that they can do that is if we are brought under complete and total control on a 24-hour basis. And that's what the New World Order is all about. Now, for those of you who weren't here the other night and are shaking your head in wonderment at number one, gee, I've never heard anything like this before, but it makes sense. But how much faith can I put in what this guy says? I have been telling people for the last 5 years what was going to happen down the line. And I've been 100% accurate on every prediction that I've ever made. And I don't like that. That's not my goal. As you just heard, my goal is to be absolutely inaccurate. Then I will know that I'm succeeding. When I was with the intelligence briefing team and the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, I saw documentation that said extraterrestrials are real. They're not only real, but they're here. They're not only here, but in 1954, an agreement was made between the United States government and these, at least one group of extraterrestrial beings, for the exchange of technology. And in return, we agreed not to disclose their presence here on Earth. We also agreed to allow them to abduct human beings on a limited periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and the monitoring of our development. That this was being, the exchange of technology was being conducted in an area called Dreamland, which was in some place which had a first name of Yucca, and I can't remember what the last part was, but I've been able to locate several Yuccas: Yucca Valley, Yucca Proving Ground, Yucca Flat, and there may be even more. But I do remember that whatever this Yucca was in the Mojave Desert. And it was called Dreamland. I know that recovered, crashed extraterrestrial craft in these documents that I read were being tested first in an area called Tonopah, and second in an area, after it was built, called Groom Dry Lake, or Area 51. I can take you today, this very minute, to a spot in the Nevada desert outside the Atomic Energy Commission test site near Groom Dry Lake. You can bring cameras, videotapes, whatever you want, and you can stand there in the desert, if you're willing to stay there 2 or 3 nights, and watch these craft fly. Watch them being test flown by the United States government. Now, you have to understand that there is so much deception and manipulation involved with the bringing about of the New World Order that even as far back as 1972, I could have been shown these documents to make me go out, eventually, knowing my psychological profile and my patriotism, and talk about this. But why would they want me to talk about it? And it appears that that may have been what's happened. Can anybody come up with that? Why would they want me to talk about it? See if anybody in here has thought that far ahead. Has anybody got an answer? Yes? Misinformation, but why? I mean, there have to be a reason for it. They don't just throw out stuff just for misinformation. I mean, there's always a goal to whatever is done specifically by the intelligence community. Yes, sir?
Acclimate you to the alien presence.
That could be one reason. Maybe they want to eventually acclimate the American people and the people of the world to an extraterrestrial presence. Why? Well, without being prepared, could you see some little guy that didn't look like us land and wade across Georgia and get out and walk down the street without getting killed? Could you? There are many places in the world where if they landed, if they're real, if they got out of their spacecraft, somebody would shoot them dead on sight. Simple as that. To put it bluntly, human beings suck. We wouldn't even give them a chance to find out who the hell they are. We've been killing each other for thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands of years. What makes anybody believe we would treat them any different? Most people, not most people, maybe most people in some areas might even be proud of it, might even want to stuff this little critter and hang it on their wall as a trophy. You got a deer last week, Joe? Well, I bagged a reticulum. It's the truth. It's the truth. Why else would they maybe want to put out this information?
Want to let us know that pretty soon that the aliens are taking over.
Well, we don't know that.
I said they want to build us up, but when they do say, well, let's build and land it, they're going to take us over.
You're close. Yes, sir.
Okay, so they can say in the future, well, we got somebody like that.
That's a good one.
Panic would cause economic collapse. And then was there.
That's true. Without preparation, there could be all kinds of consequences, all of them bad. And they could say, hey, we've been telling you for years. What do you mean we never told you? We've been telling you for years. You're just too dumb to realize it. Yes, sir.
I think for like movies, a lot of television, those things, it's kind of their way of testing our reaction. The name goes in there and just. We might be looking for individuals who are under their schemes, stop.
Absolutely right. One good example of that is Robert Lazar. I encourage all the other scientists who work at the test site to come forward. If any of them did, I guarantee you they're locked up tighter than a drum right now. Yes, sir? That's a good one. In other words, a shock test for the computer model of the New World Order, which has already been in place. I'll try one more. Yes? Pardon? Declare martial law? No. No. How about this? How many of you in here have ever read a report called A Report from Iron Mountain? Anybody? Stand up. I bet you this guy's got the answer. What did it say in that report?
Well, the report was basically about how the economy was, in a way, based on war. Everything. The report was called Report from Iron Mountain on the Possibilities and Desirabilities of Peace. And what that study group wanted to know was if it was possible to continue the system in peace without using war. And
What was the part that
Now, I'm really proud of this young man. I just met him here. How old are you? 16 years old. He knows a lot more at 16 than I ever knew at 30. And I guarantee you from talking to him, he knows a lot more than most of the people in this room. That's the future. And as long as we have young men and women like him, then we stand a chance of having a good future. So, for those of you who live in Phoenix, I'd appreciate it if you'd really give this guy your support, especially if you have groups and things that meet. He wants to establish a group for younger people to learn about these things. The report from Iron Mountain was a study made and financed by the United States government in order to find out if we could ever genuinely live in peace, disarm all the nations and live in peace, a lasting peace. The report, the conclusion, was not too optimistic in that the report made it very clear, and for those people in this room who really understand how the economies of the world work, you know that the economy of not just this nation, but most nations of the world is a war-based economy. And without the defense industrial complex, we would be at this moment in the midst of a depression that would make the Great Depression of the early part of this century look like a Sunday school picnic. We derive over 70% of our gross national product directly from businesses that service or support the defense industrial complex. The defense industrial complex, to the elite who really understand these things, is a welfare system to keep us from revolting against the powerful few. It keeps a chicken in every pot, and that's what it's really for. The Cold War was a scam. The United States and the Soviet Union have been operating a secret space program out of the public view since the end of World War II. They have developed a technology that would make George Lucas and Steven Spielberg turn green with envy. Resembles nothing less than sheer magic. For those of you who are interested in alternative healing methods, they don't withhold those things from the public so doctors can get rich, like I've heard from so many people who are into alternative methods of healing. They do it to keep the population of the masses in check. They want people to die. People have to die. The sooner the better, in their estimation. Why? Let me tell you why. Because between 1957 and 1990, the population of the world doubled. I remember going around for years wondering, what the hell's going on? I mean, everything's different. It's not the same anymore. And it wasn't. It was mainly a result of increased population. What happened between 1950 and 1990 is going to happen again in maybe as little. See, that was 33 years. It may only take another 28 years because it's an exponential doubling. Each time, it only takes a shorter period of time. Between 1957 and 1990, when the population doubled, that meant we needed twice as many trees, twice as many homes, twice as many highways, twice as many cars, twice as much gasoline, twice as much clean fresh water, twice as much food, twice as much cotton, twice as many wigs, twice as many barbershops. And guess what, folks? In another 28 years, we're going to need twice as many of everything else again. How long do you think that this earth can support that kind of thing? And you listen to people like Rush Limbaugh who say, there's no population problem. And I'm Rush Limbaugh, excellence in broadcasting. We could take every man, woman, and child in the whole world, fit them into the state of Oregon, and everybody would have half of a city lot to live on. That's an imbecile talking. Sure, you could put them all there, but how are you going to feed them? Where are you going to get the trees? Where are you going to get the leather for shoes? Where are you going to get the food? What are you going to do with the waste? We've already run out of landfills. A lot of what's going on in the world is about population. It's about the survival of the human race. It's about the ultimate victory in this race between good and evil, the balance of the universe. Who's going to win? And what are they going to do with everybody else that doesn't win? This country was founded as the answer to that problem. The United States, we've all known, anybody who's lived in this country has known that this country somehow is special, not because we live here, simply because this was the ultimate pinnacle of achievement of mankind throughout the history of this earth. Never in history had any peoples ever been granted kings, sovereign kings in their own right, with the government as their chattel slave, until the Bill of Rights, or excuse me, not the Bill of Rights, but the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was written. And later the Bill of Rights, which filled in some of the things that were left out of the Constitution. How do I know this? This guy's wacko. This is no different from any other country. It's just our forefathers had bigger guns than King George did. It can be proven mathematically. And now you think I'm really nuts. These men who run these secret societies, who are the guardians of the secrets of the ages, knew a secret. They know lots of secrets, but they knew one secret that is more important than any other secret that can be learned. They know what God really is. They know it. They're not going to tell us. Now, I think I've learned some part of this secret. Everything that they do has a mathematical precision to it that is nothing short of astounding. Absolutely astounding. Einstein said it once. He said, there's nothing that can't be figured out with mathematics, proven with mathematics. He said history can be proven with mathematics, and he was right. This seems to be a mathematical universe. Now, I'm going to give you some numbers, and I hope that you write them down, because these are the important numbers. 1, 3, 7, 11, and 13, and any multiple of those numbers. Every significant event that has ever happened throughout history has happened on a date with a combination of these numbers. When was President Kennedy assassinated? What was the date? Month was November, wasn't it? What month is that? What day? 22, that's a multiple of 11, isn't it? 1963? What have you got there? You got a 9, you got a 6, and a 3. All multiples of 3, and if you take the 1 and add it on to the 7, I mean to the 6, you have a 7 in there. Or if you add them all up together, what do they come up to? Pardon? 19, 9, and 1 is what? 10. Now, if you know numerology, 10 is the number 1, isn't it? It never fails. It never, ever fails. When was this country started? 1776. 2 7s, a 6, and a 1. Figure it out, folks. I mean, I don't have to stand up here and do this all night. You can figure it out with any important dates throughout the history of the world. It is just absolutely true. Now, you can go a step further. They believe, and I've come to believe this also, and that's why my job is so important. We have to raise, as the answer to this battle, we have to raise the collective consciousness of the entire human race, and we have to do it quickly. It must be done. And I know there's some of you out there, you never heard of this. What is a collective consciousness? It is all of us thinking the same thought, which then becomes powerful. It's the power of prayer. That's what prayer is. And I'm not preaching to you, and I'm not talking religion. I'm talking fact. This is the truth. This is one of the ultimate truths that's been withheld from us. A thought, a pure thought, if enough people think it, will manifest itself as reality. And when it manifests, it grows. And as it grows, it will take on a three-dimensional quality. And that's why the pyramid is the building block of the universe. That's why Father, Son, Holy Ghost. That's why the number 3 is so important. That's why in one there is always 3. Believe it, it's true. That's why when this nation was founded under God, the thought created 3 realities under the heading of Father, Son, Holy Ghost, which became this country. If you take the date 1776 and start at the apex of the first pyramid and put M, this date is written in Roman numerals on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States at the base of the pyramid, and it's on the back of every dollar bill that you have in your pocket. Take one out. We're going to talk about this dollar bill quite a bit for the next few moments. Nobody told me all this, folks. It's just that in all my years of studying these secret societies, all of a sudden, I began to become illuminated, which is what they call themselves. If you study something long enough, sooner or later, you become to understand it. If you start at the apex of the first pyramid, remember there are 3, go from the top to the left corner on the bottom and across to the right corner of the first one, and then start at the top of the second one, and put those Roman numerals at each corner. Across the top, you will come up with MCX. MCX is 1110. That was the date that the ultimate branch of this secret group of men founded the Knights Templar, which is still in existence no matter what you've been told. It was founded by the Prior de Sion in the city of Jerusalem. It was commissioned to find and guard the last remaining relics of Jesus Christ, and to guard the pilgrims who were traveling to and from the Holy Land. They weren't destroyed because they were controlling the money of the King of France, as you see in history, because history has been rewritten to make you believe what they want you to believe. It was destroyed because they withheld these relics from the Pope and from the King when they demanded that they be turned over. Now, if you take 1110 and take the culmination of prophecy and add to it, which is 666, what do you get? You get 1776. The Knights Templar were founded to fulfill prophecy, and this country was founded to fulfill prophecy by these men according to a mathematical formula. Now, if you did that with the triangles across the bottom, take the 2 Roman numerals at the bottom of each pyramid and add them together, and you come up with the first one is 600. That's what you should have. The 2 Roman numerals at the bottom of the second pyramid should add up to 60. And the 2 Roman numerals at the bottom of the third pyramid should add up to 6, which is 660 and 6. The foundation of this country, the thought, manifested itself as the fulfillment of prophecy. No, you're lost. I said draw in your mind 3 pyramids. Take the Roman numerals at the bottom of the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill, starting at the top of the first pyramid with the first Roman numeral. And then go down to the lower left and the lower right, and start at the top of the second one and place those Roman numerals. It's 1776 in Roman numerals.
There's 9 digits on the bottom.
Yeah. But we don't have time to go through that with every individual here. Remember that when you get home, do it, if you don't have time to do it here. I can't take time out from this seminar and go over this with each individual person in this room. Believe me, it comes out. It comes out with a precision that is astounding. You see, because as the country manifested, it also manifested its antithesis. In other words, what these men realize and what they know is that in the beginning, is there a minister in here? Is there a reverend, a minister? Yes. Can you quote me the first paragraph of Genesis? What I'm talking about, and I didn't want to misquote it because I haven't memorized it. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It talks about there was the Word, and the Word was with God. These men believe this, and I've come to think that this is probably true. No matter what your concept of God is, if you believe in a God, God created everything that there is. If you don't believe in God, then it all happened by accident, so this may have been the way it happened by accident. We don't have to be in church to understand this, and it has nothing to do with church because the men who believe these things aren't religious men. They believe that in the beginning there was nothing, but whatever there was in this nothing came together as a thought. If you can imagine that. It's the old thing, what came first, the chicken and the egg? Well, they believed that this was pure thought. And the thought, because it was all there was, manifested the reality of everything that is or ever will be was manifested at the same time. Now, they're not talking about fate. They're talking about everything that could ever exist in all of its forms was manifested then. In other words, there weren't 400 million creations. In other words, next year, he's not going to create Joe Smith, who's going to work in a pickle factory. Joe Smith was created in the beginning. Everything that ever is, was, or will be was created at that moment. And individual thought, our consciousness, is what arranges everything that is into what can be in the future. Now, you don't have to believe this, but this is what I'm telling you, these men believe. They think this, they believe it. And as far as I can tell, they appear to be right. Lemon-colored Cadillac parked in fire lane. Must move are, well, I'm not going to say what they said. It's going to happen here, but if you got a lemon-colored Cadillac, I'd go move it. Huh? It says lemon-colored Cadillac. If you're confused about what color your Cadillac is, you better go check. If I were you, I would check. Okay. Now, the reason you have to understand what these men believe is so you can understand what it is that they're trying to do. When I was in military intelligence, one of the major efforts was to understand the enemy, was to know everything possible about an enemy commander, about his plans, his education, what he believed, his religion, everything. Because he will base what he does upon who and what he is and what he's been taught. It's as simple as that. If you don't know who you're fighting, you can't effectively fight the battle. Does everybody follow that line of reasoning? So it always amazes me. I'm talking to somebody, and we're in the midst of a deep conversation, and I ask that person, have you read the English version of Pravda within the last month? And they look at me and say, are you crazy? I would never read Pravda. It's a communist newspaper. Then I know that I'm talking to someone who's not too bright. He would never read what his enemy prints, so he's never going to know anything about the enemy. I mean, that's not smart. I know people in the UFO community who won't read someone's papers or someone's book or go listen to someone because that person's not credible. Or that person may be telling some truth, but there's disinformation in there. See, I'm always assembling two puzzles. I'm assembling the truth in this puzzle here, and over here I'm trying to assemble what they want me to believe. I don't throw away anything, and I listen to everyone. I read everything that I can get my hands on, because it's important. How can you fight a war with an enemy that you don't know anything about? And if you don't know what their deception plan is, how do you know that you're not living it? How do you know that you haven't fallen for and aren't fulfilling their plan of deception to keep you busy if you don't even know what it is? So it's important. You have to do these things. It's absolutely important. Now, this is not a literal meaning in this story. It is, I guess, the metaphor of their God. These men who control these secret societies, who really control this country and every other country in the world, and thus the world, believe that man was held captive in the bonds of ignorance in the Garden of Eden by a vindictive, unjust God named Jehovah. And that Lucifer, the angel of light, who was cast out of heaven to the earth, and is the angel of the earth, the God of this world, set man free from the bonds of ignorance through his agent Satan by enticing Eve to get man to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Thus Lucifer gave man the gift of reason, by which man, through technology, will become God. That is at the root of their philosophy, and that is the true satanic thought, if you want to call it that. If you're a Christian, that's what you're going to label it. Others would say that these are learned men who have discovered that superstition is the wrong way to live a life, and that by using your intellect and your brain, man will become God. I'm not going to argue those points. It's not why we're here. I'm here to impart knowledge to you, if I can, for those who will accept it and will take it out and prove it right or prove it wrong and use it. Because we're engaged in the ultimate battle for man himself, your very soul. This is what this is all about. It's what everything is all about. The final battle between good and evil. There's a balance in the universe. And if thought can manifest itself as reality, just as it did in the beginning, its antithesis will also manifest. And that is the way the balance of the universe is maintained. You have to understand that the word good has no literal meaning whatsoever if bad does not exist. There can be no good without evil. There can be no evil without good. A woman without a man will be the last in her line of species. Whether she's an ant, whether she's a human, whether she's a bird, makes no difference. A man without a woman will be the last in his species. There can be no positive without negative. It doesn't exist. I've had some real belly laughs over this concept in the New Age movement that you're not supposed to think a negative thought, that you're supposed to dismiss all negativity from your mind. You can't live that way. It doesn't work. To do that is to say, there will never be a problem, and if there is, I will turn my head and walk the other way. It's a trap. Carefully laid, but it's a trap. The concept that man is God is a trap also carefully laid. Very attractive. Everybody wants to be a God. It's really neat to go to a seminar and walk out and say, I'm God. But it's a trap. We all have, as I said the other night, a spark of divinity in us, a spark of God, a part of God. God made the universe. We all are a part of God, but no part can ever be greater than or as great as the whole. It cannot be. All of us together and everything that's in the universe together with the ultimate law of the universe is God. Doesn't matter how you visualize this God as a person or as energy or whatever. If you believe that there is an ultimate law to the universe, there must be a God. Otherwise, physics couldn't exist. There can't be order without someone or something that makes the rule, that makes the order. And it doesn't have to be a person, but you have to understand that something is dictating the order of the universe. I'm very careful, try not to step on anybody's toes as far as religion is concerned, because I know that that can get into extremely heated emotional problems and arguments and everything else. My own personal religion is not trying to be foisted down your throats. And I hope you don't try to do that in reverse. Because I truly do believe in the Constitution. And that says we have freedom of religion. And it shall not be infringed. So that's why I word my lectures and my workshops in this manner. Because I don't want to infringe upon your constitutional right. I hope everybody can understand what I mean by that. Yes, sir.
A question. Were not the framers of the Constitution Illuminati?
Yes, they were.
And were they just gambling that they wanted to be people? Was that a sincere effort on their part?
Yes, absolutely.
Or were they just gambling that people would?
No, these are the men who engineered the downfall of the monarchies all over the world. The kings and queens. Their downfall was engineered by these men. These are the same men who engineered the French Revolution. The very same. When they started this country, the United States of America, they did it to find out. See, everything they've done since the fall of the monarchs has been an experiment to find out what is the best government for the world that will result in lasting peace, where man doesn't have to kill man anymore. You see, I'm not totally against everything that these guys have as goals. I'm totally against the way they're going about it. I'm against the fact that they think I'm stupid and can't participate and won't give me a chance in a country that's supposed to be of, for, and by the people. That's what I'm against. You know, I believe that we ultimately have to find some way, all of us, to come together and stop killing each other. But I don't believe that's going to happen by manipulating a new world order, a one world government, or by locking people in chains, because somebody's always going to be killing somebody else unless we collectively are able to make an evolutionary movement above all of that, so that I don't have to be afraid of you coming to steal what I have, so that I don't have to be afraid of you getting together an army and coming to kill me. You see? All this manipulation by these secret societies is not going to amount to a hill of beans unless we can do this ourselves. And the only way we can do that is by collectively believing in ourselves, using our intellect, really becoming spiritual people, not talking it or going to seminars and feeling good that you went to a seminar and now you're a spiritual person. Boy, for all these gods that are walking around in the New Age movement, man, I've seen these gods do some things that are incredible. For instance, the most spiritually looking people at this seminar this weekend were the only ones that I saw sneaking into workshops without paying. Yet, I mean, they were dressed the part, they were preaching, they were going around blessing people. I'm not going to tell you who they are, because my purpose is not to hurt anybody. But I want you to know that. I mean, you can't profess it and not live it. It can't be done. And expect the world to be a better place. I think everybody in this room came to this seminar because they really want the world to be a better place. But I know that many people who are here professing that want, when they leave here, are going to go do something bad to their fellow man. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of greed, maybe out of weakness, maybe out of temptation, but nevertheless it will be done. And I can safely make that prediction because that's what man's been doing since the beginning of time, because that is the nature of man. That is our nature. The first thing you have to understand before you can correct a problem is you have to understand what the problem is. Our problem is our nature. And that's why we must make an evolutionary jump forward in our collective consciousness as a species in order to stop this stuff. How can it be done? By beginning to think it and live it and communicate it and educate others. That's the way it can be done. That's the way it will be done. By using your intellect. By the next time that George Bush comes on television and tells you you have to send your sons and daughters to Ethiopia to kill the people in charge of the food because they're starving the children, or whatever stupid excuse he uses, that you stand up and say, hey, no way, Georgie, we're not biting on it this time. We're not sending our sons and daughters to Ethiopia to defend this country or anything else, period. We're not fighting any more wars. We're not going to kill anybody else. Did you really believe that for the last 45, 50 years that all the Russians were sitting around their kitchen tables plotting ways to do away with us? Did you really believe that? How many of you think that that was happening? Good. Most Americans did, I think. They thought that every Russian wanted to come over here and wage war on us and bomb us off the planet. It's not true, folks. Those people sitting around their kitchen table were worried about where they were going to get their next ruble and how they were going to feed their kids for the next month, and whether or not they were going to get a promotion at the plant, just like all of you were doing for the last 40, 45 years. It's the leaders that manipulate us into these things for reasons that never become apparent to us unless we start digging, and it usually boils down to money. Money. It only happens because we let it happen. We only let it happen because we really are stupid and we really don't use our intellect. And that's why I said earlier that you must be able to stand in front of your mirror and admit it to yourself. And only then, once you've admitted that that problem exists, can you begin to correct it. I had to do it, and it took me a long time to do it because I was a pretty proud, pretty brainwashed, oriented, establishment, gung-ho, military idiot. And that's the truth. I was stupid. But I'm not stupid today. And I hope you're not stupid today, and I hope you won't be stupid tomorrow or the next week or the month after that. But you will never get out of that until you can admit it first. That's important. You have to stop fighting someone because that person looks different. I had to just crack up. You know, I'd be on a radio talk show somewhere talking about my experiences and what I had learned, and somebody would call in. And this happened on many occasions because it's part of the government's campaign to discredit me in the eyes of the public. Somebody always calls in and says, we have proof that Bill Cooper is a member of a branch of the white Aryan race and is a racist. I wish my wife was here because that's when I asked my wife to come in. My wife is Chinese, you see. And I always laugh at that point because they didn't do their homework. That's why it's so easy to beat this enemy. They never do their homework. I have people call in now and say that I'm anti-Semitic because I published the Protocols of Zion in my book. They pick up my book, and they lived through it in Protocols of Zion. Oh my God, we've got to mobilize the communities and anti-Semitic. He wants to kill all the Jews. And then they feel really bad when they find out that in my book I make a very, very literal point of the fact that this is not the Jews that are behind all this stuff. I published the Protocols of Zion so that you would begin to understand what is happening, what has happened, and what's going to happen. The test of a document is not who somebody said wrote it or didn't write it. That doesn't make any difference whatsoever. You see, the Protocols of Sion, and that's really the name of them, not Zion. Zion is a corruption of the name Sion, which is really the mount where Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem. That's the real name of it. And that's the real name of that document, the Protocols of Sion. It was written by the Illuminati, not the Jews. There are some Jews in the Illuminati. There are also some Episcopalians and some atheists. And a lot of other people. I wrote it so people can see how they're deceived and how this deception works. Another one's the gemstone file. The gemstone file is pure disinformation that was put out by the Central Intelligence Agency researchers on astounding journeys in fiction and never get at the truth. The test of a document, such as the Protocols of Sion, as I have published in my book, absolutely accurately, I did not change one word, were written in the 1700s, folks. And the test of the authenticity of a document is not whose name is signed on the bottom, it's whether or not the plan in the document is carried out. And the plan in that document has been carried out to the letter since the 1700s, and the only thing that has not come to pass as of this day that's outlined in that document is they have not yet placed a descendant of the house of David who can say that he's related to Jesus Christ on the throne of the world. And when they do, he will not be the enemy. He will be the figurehead of the real shadow power that lies behind the throne, just like right now today. How many of you believe that Ronald Reagan was really running this country? How many of you thought it was Nancy? If you guessed Nancy, you were closer to the truth than if you guessed Ronald, because Nancy is the granddaughter of John W. Davis, the founding president of the Council on Foreign Relations. It was when he married Nancy that he went from a liberal Democrat to a conservative Republican and became a serious political contender. Why did they choose him through Nancy to become the president of the United States? How many of you men in here served in the armed forces of your country? How many of you realized at some point that every single training film that you watched was narrated by Ronald Reagan? See, you were already conditioned and brainwashed that he was the voice of authority and that you should vote for him even though you didn't make that conscious connection. The election that brought Ronald Reagan into power was rigged many years earlier. Was rigged. Every man who ever served in the armed forces in this country voted for Ronald Reagan. Because they had been trained to listen to him, to believe him, and thus to vote for him. Although they may not have consciously made that connection in their mind, it's the truth. How many of you recently saw a show on television called Nostradamus, the Man Who Saw Tomorrow? Narrated by Charlton Heston. How many of you saw that? Okay. How many of you who saw it recognized that it was the same old one that was originally narrated by Orson Welles that had been chopped up and repieced together and was now narrated by Charlton Heston? How many of you realized that? How many of you saw at the end that they had changed it and that the man in the turban who was to be the Antichrist was no longer the man in the turban but was a man in a blue beret, and his name was Saddam Hussein? and that Charlton Heston, who has a top secret Q clearance and who makes the training films for the intelligence community and other branches of the military, said that when this despot, this Hitler, this Antichrist is once and forever deposed by our forces in the Middle East, the world will come together as one. How many of you remember that? That was a propaganda film aimed at you, the American people, by the intelligence community of the United States of America, and most people were too stupid to even understand it. And you think that this doesn't happen in America? I bet you can check it out at your video store, and you should. AT&T, one world, one card. What was the thing at the 1984 Olympic Games that came down and landed in the center of the Coliseum? It was a UFO. Why? Why a commercial of Docker Slacks that says, hey, guys, America's hosting EBs. Guys, EBs? What's an EB? EB is extraterrestrial biological entity, and America is hosting EBs. And everybody says EBs, GBs, and they show the label of Docker Slacks. What's that got to do with Docker Slacks? Nothing, but it's got a lot to do with brainwashing you, the people, to accept an extraterrestrial presence here on this earth. And the landing of the UFO in the Coliseum at the Olympic Games and Docker Slacks are both Levi Strauss sponsored events. That's just one. The multinational corporations are participating in this brainwashing. Why? Because the New World Order, there's not going to be any small business, folks. They're going to be huge, gigantic, multinational, corporate, conglomerate monopolies. They're all for it. I've had members of the board of directors of multinational corporations tell me I was wasting my time. That the people are so stupid they're not even worried that anybody will listen to me, and that the New World Order is done deal and it's just around the corner. I've had them tell me that. That's how big their ego is. Their ego is so big they can't wait. CBS used to just be the eye. Now they got the pink triangle revolving around it. They're telling you. They can't hold it back. How many of you have seen the logo for American West Publishers? How many of you know who American West Publishers is? How many of you have heard of the Phoenix Journals? George Green? How many of you know who I'm talking about? Let's see a show of hands. His logo is the triangle, has an eye in each corner. In the middle is the American flag. In the symbology of the Illuminati, he is telling you America is in total control of the Illuminati. In a way, he's laughing at you. And he's putting out volumes and volumes and volumes of plagiarized word-for-word material to scare you so bad that you will not resist. And in the latest one, Commander Hatton, the space cadet, is recommending that you liquidate all your assets, convert your assets to cash, send the cash to George Green. He will buy gold and he will store it for you. Because in the New World Order, all property and all wealth will be redistributed and you won't be allowed to have gold. Well, what makes you think he'll be allowed to have it? And what makes you think he's going to give it back to you after all this occurs? And guess what? Thousands of people are sending George Green their money, except the people in Texas. You see, because all across the state of Texas are these unfinished real estate developments that George Green started, stole the money, and split to the UFO community. And they're standing down there with a rope in their hand waiting for him to come back. Because he already ripped off the whole state of Texas, and now he's going for you guys. These are just examples of how they're flaunting it right in front of your nose and how people are buying this and sucking it up and don't even understand what's going on. It's an example of what they believe to be true
proving itself to be true, and that's what's got to stop. You've got to stop proving to them that we're cattle, that we're stupid, that we can't use our intellect, and we're not worthy of governing ourselves, because that's the decision they've made, and that's why the New World Order has to be. You see, this government was founded as an experiment to become the New World Order in one of two ways. Either by proving that people could, through the tools that they gave us, really, honestly, truthfully, and forever rule themselves, or they would fail miserably, and they would lock us down under tight control, and they would rule us. The decision was that the experiment has failed, and I have to tell you, they're absolutely right. When nobody votes, we're not running this country. When nobody cares, we're not running this country. When you elect professional politicians time after time after time to the same office, we're not running this country. We don't even pay them. Why would you even dream that they're representing us? They have no reason to represent us. They're paid by the federal government. See, our country was set up so that citizens would go serve in the State House or in Washington for one term from any community, and one term only, no matter what office they held, and never go back again. And while they were gone, the community sent them rations to subsist upon, took care of their farm or their business, and made sure that their family was fed and their health was taken care of. They had a vested interest in making sure that they represented that community, wouldn't you say? Who have we sent to Washington or to the State House lately that has a vested interest in representing any of us? I can't count one. I can't count any that even care. And the Hawaiian people are so proud of Daniel K. Inouye. And he sold them down the tubes, giving away their land. Maybe you read the paper this morning. Giving the Hawaiian people's land away. In the Iran-Contra hearings, he was the chairman of the committee. When Congressman Jack Brooks brought up the issue of the plan to suspend the Constitution, which is not allowed for anywhere in the Constitution, so it's illegal, he was shut up by Daniel K. Inouye. I can talk about senators and congressmen from every state in this union because they're all just as guilty. Let's take about a 5-minute break, let everybody stretch. I don't know if you can make it out safely and back to your chair, but at least you can stand up and take a stretch and a breather, and then we'll start again. Folks, I hate to rush you like that on the breaks, but they've cut my time severely. Normally, my workshops and programs that I do go between 5 and 6 hours because there's so much information to cover, and there's so many things that you need to have to start your own research and to be able to go out of here and realize really that something is wrong. Whether you believe everything that I'm telling you or not is not important. What is important is that you get the impetus, the desire, when you leave here to go and start doing research and checking on your own, so that you will find out that indeed something is seriously wrong and that we need to be taking some corrective action. And I hope that it leads you to take the corrective action that I'm going to give you tonight so that we can win this battle. And it is a battle, make no mistake about that. There are ways and means to control people. The Illuminati found out many, many years ago that it is better to have people ask for the control than to force it on them. Does everybody understand that concept? In other words, if I ask for you to put shackles on my ankles, I'm not going to complain when you do. But if you come and try to put them on my ankles and I didn't ask for it, you're liable to have a hell of a big fight if I'm capable of giving you one. That's what that means. That's when they began to practice, and they did this long before Hegel came along, and Hegel may have been verbalizing the philosophy of the Illuminati when he wrote his papers, which outlined the philosophy of of Hegelian conflict resolution through thesis, antithesis. The clash between the two produces the synthesis. Now let me tell you how easily this is done. The Soviet Union, well first, let's start here in the United States. This country was founded, fought for, and established by only 3% of the entire people who lived in the first 13 colonies. The other 97% were either on the side of King George or didn't give a damn. Only 3% of the entire people of the first 13 colonies participated in the writing of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitutional Convention, the writing and adopting of the Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, all of those things, and fought for and established this country. Now, many people, wherever I go, all the time, and this is the time to bring this up because somebody's going to ask it sooner or later, so let's get out of the way now. Many people ask me, why are you doing this? Aren't you afraid for your life? The answer is no, I'm not. I don't even think about it, and I never will think about it. And where would we be if our forefathers thought about what King George was going to do to them if he caught them? We wouldn't even have this country. We wouldn't have this experiment. We wouldn't have the opportunity that we have. I sincerely believe this. Any man or woman who does not have principles for which they're ready and willing to die for at any given moment that is required is already dead and is no use or consequence to themselves or anyone else whatsoever. In other words, if you don't truly have something that you're really willing to die for, you have no reason to live. And that's what's wrong with so many of our people who are depressed, don't have any direction. They get up in the morning, they hate to get up, they hate to go to work, they hate their wife, they hate the TV, they hate their car. They're directionless. They have not identified anything that they can be so passionate about that they're willing to die for and thus be able to have a life. Because that's what it takes to have a life. That's what's wrong with so many Vietnam veterans. They went and they lived on the edge of the razor blade to become a hero like their fathers before them, and they were rejected by the American people. That's what's wrong with them. They were willing to go and die to be able to march in the parades like their fathers did, and they were rejected. Now they have no reason to live. For those who haven't been able to resolve that conflict. How do I know this? I was one of them. It affected me too. The Soviet Union was founded, was fought for, and established by only 5% of the entire people who live within the boundaries of the Soviet Union. Does everybody understand what I'm telling you? This is significant. Throughout history, in any major world change, it has been accomplished by less than 5% of the population in any place where it ever happened. And look at Jesus Christ. Whether you believe in him or not, it doesn't make any difference. You have to give the man the recognition that he changed the entire world for over 2,000 years. So for those of you with no hope, that should give you hope. It should give you lots of hope. Because we don't need everybody to make this a good world. And that's proof of it, in my estimation. The bankers on Wall Street and in London financed the Bolshevik Revolution. This is documented. It's been proven many times. The United States of America and London bankers have kept the Soviet Union afloat for all these years. It's been proven. The Rockefeller family has a branch of Chase Bank in the Kremlin. It was David Rockefeller that fired Khrushchev. How many of you knew that? One man, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's true, because Khrushchev talked too much. He said in the United Nations on television, we don't have to bomb the United States. We don't have to bring an army and conquer you. You will be destroyed from within. Bam, Rockefeller was on a plane to Moscow, and 3 days later, Khrushchev stepped down. He almost gave the plan away. The Council on Foreign Relations really rules this country. No matter what you've been taught, no matter what you've been told. In the back of my book, I've documented in the Bush administration exactly who is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, which is a branch of the Council on Foreign Relations. They have infiltrated our government and control it from within. The executive, the judicial, the highest ranks of the military, and many members of the Senate and the House of Representatives. The only one who's not a member is Dan Quayle. How many of you think Dan Quayle is a blithering idiot? There's a lot of people in here afraid to raise their hand, or else they know what I'm going to say next. Dan Quayle is one of the most powerful men in this country. Dan Quayle was the representative of the United States of America to the meeting of the Bilderberg Group in Baden-Baden this year. They don't take blithering idiots in the Bilderberg Group. So stop laughing at Dan Quayle. They're putting out the image that they want you to have of him rather than the reality of who this man is. His family helped bring George Bush to power. His family owns a controlling interest of Lilly Pharmaceuticals. His family has helped George Bush run the drug consortium that is feeding the economy to bring together the New World Order and fund all the black projects that they can't get money from Congress for. How many of you never knew where the drugs came from in this country, or think it's from the Colombian drug lords? Be honest. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but I want to see how many people in here really know what's going on. Okay, for those of you who don't know, let's do this little exercise. It's always good for everybody, even if you know it, because it reinforces what you know. Everybody close your eyes, and on the back of your eyelids, draw a map of the United States and all its possessions. And on that map, put a little dot wherever there is a city or a town, anywhere in the United States and all of its possessions. Now, if you've done it right, there should be so many little dots on that map that it would take you quite a long time to count them, because that's how many cities and towns there really are in this great country of ours. Now that you've seen that, understand this. In every single one of those little cities and big cities and towns and communities in this country and in all of our possessions, anyone who wants to can get any kind of narcotic in any quantity that they wish at any time, day or night. And then try to tell me that it's the Colombian drug lords who have such a protection and a distribution network and an accounting system that makes sure that the right amount of drugs are delivered to the right city and the right town on time and the right quantity and aren't caught, because they never run out. The only ones who get caught are the ones that are in competition with the Central Intelligence Agency. And the drug war is not a war on drugs. They're concentrating on the users. It's a war on the Bill of Rights. It's a war on us. It is Hegelian conflict resolution. It is thesis, antithesis, synthesis. They decide what they want, and they put in motion the problem that will arrive at the solution that they want, and they cause us to ask for that solution. How many of you saw the poll recently, the results of which said that most Americans are willing to give up some of their constitutional rights to get the drugs and crime off the streets? How many of you saw that poll? It was on the front page of many newspapers. That's what they did this for. That's one of the reasons. See, drugs are accomplishing three things. They bring in to the black projects and to the New World Order more money every year than the gross national product of this nation. Every year. Number two, it is a form of euphemistic slavery for the lower classes, the proletariat, as they call them. The masses, the cattle, are enslaved with drugs. They are under complete control because the master can control them by giving or withholding their addiction. They don't think of anything else except how can I get my next fix and where can I get the money to buy it. Understand this, it's true. Number three, it creates waves of fear that roll through the middle class of this country and make them rise up and ask for more control. Ask that their rights be taken away. Ask to join the New World Order. Our forefathers gave us one tool that no people in the history of the world has ever had, and that is the second article and amendment to the Constitution. It has nothing to do with whether or not you have a right to go hunting. Has nothing to do with protecting your personal property against burglars who might enter your home. Has nothing to do with a woman protecting herself from being raped on a city street late at night. The second article and amendment to the Constitution has only one purpose. It's to protect us against our own government should it ever become oppressive and usurp the powers of the Constitution. That's its only purpose. Those of you who are for gun control will take away the only real weapon that we have that can truly ensure that they can never oppress us. You see, because we never have to exercise that right. If everybody in this country, and I was taught when I was a child that it was a duty for every man to own a weapon and 100 rounds of ammunition, should he ever be called to protect his community from an oppressive government. My father taught me that. It's not being taught anymore. I will teach my daughter that. And I will teach her how to use weapons and how to clean them and how to store them safely so that nobody can get hurt. And I will teach her that as long as you have it, make sure that everybody knows that you have it, because that's the surety, bond, that no one will ever attempt to hurt us or take anything away from us just because they have the knowledge that each of us has a weapon and is willing to use it if we have to. They will never try. No one could successfully march against 260 million armed citizens. It's impossible. Can't be done by the largest army on the face of this earth. And by the way, that's the Communist Chinese army, and they don't have any way to get here. There's no bridge. They don't have a navy big enough to carry an army that could fight us. But if you ever allow the second article amendment to be usurped, to be taken away, to give up your guns, that is the day that you will cease to be a free people. And for those of you who think I'm heartless and cruel because of that, because little Johnny shot his little sister because she found the gun in Daddy's bureau drawer, I'm not heartless and cruel. My heart bleeds for that family and for that child, and for the child that shot that child, and for the father that was so careless and stupid that he left the weapon where a little child could get it. But I'm not going to give up the freedom of a whole nation of people because little Johnny shot little Susie. That's not right. Every right bears with it a responsibility. Just like the freedom of speech. You're responsible not to slander your neighbor. It doesn't give you the right to slander someone or tell a lie about someone or hurt someone. And the responsibility of the second article amendment does not give you the right to leave a loaded weapon where a little child can get it. See? I hope everybody understands what I'm talking about. That's right. You take away the swimming pool. The child drowns. And that's a good point. You know, how many children have drowned in Phoenix? More children drown in Arizona than any other state in the Union. Less children are shot, but they still want to take the guns away. But nobody's trying to take the swimming pools away. Why? Because you're being brainwashed that it's the gun that does it. And nobody's brainwashing you, telling you that it's the pool that does it. I hope you understand that. You can take away all my guns. If I want to kill you, believe me, I'll do it. And I won't need a gun. Guarantee you, I'll do it. And I might do it with a swimming pool. We've gotten to the point where life is so challenging and we are flooded with so much information on a daily basis that we have stopped handling it with responsibility and have begun to take the easy way out. And that's normal, because that's our nature. When presented with two choices, we usually want to take the easy way. This is not accidental at all. The media is owned and controlled by members of the Council on Foreign Relations. All of the media in this country is owned by 5 corporations. All owned and controlled by members of the Council on Foreign Relations. That includes the network television, most independent television, all the newspapers in this country. That's why you don't get the truth. That's why during the Iraq War, you were told that 94% of the American people support the president and support the war. It was a lie. That's why during the war, out of 800 interviews conducted about the war on television, there was only one dissenting opinion. Out of 800 interviews. That's why on the media you never saw anything about the large demonstrations taking place in every city across this country, unless you lived in the local area. And even there, in many cities, they never showed it even on the local television stations. Fox TV in Los Angeles admitted it. I believe it was Fox. Was it Fox? I don't want to make a mistake here. Let me retract. Let me say, one TV in Los Angeles admitted it. Admitted that they purposely did not cover the anti-war demonstrations. Look what happened. How many of you remember the name of the reporter who stayed in Iraq? What was his name? Peter Arnett, right? Remember him? What happened to him? Because he was reporting from Iraq and was telling what was really happening there. What happened to him? Any of you know? Any of you heard of him since then? His career was destroyed. George Bush named him by name as being a traitor to the American people. So did many others. Is that in the spirit of the Constitution and the first article and amendment? No. It was a propaganda campaign. It was a slapdown. It was a bam, don't you ever do it again. And it was an object lesson to every other journalist in this country. Don't you ever again tell the truth unless it's what we want told. And you can bet your life that every journalist learned that lesson. If you want to stay in journalism, if you want to be at the top, if you don't want to be branded a traitor, you better not go against me, says Mr. George Bush. George Bush, ladies and gentlemen, is the foremost and first, number one traitor that I'm able to identify in this country right at this very moment. And that's why the other night when I came on the stage, I introduce myself as George Bush's worst nightmare. Because as a member of the Office of Naval Intelligence, I happen to know that it was George Bush who headed up and started the first large-scale drug smuggling operations into this country when he was the president and CEO of the offshore oil division of Zapata Oil in the Gulf of Mexico. The drugs were brought in from Central and South America to the offshore oil platforms and then by the normal crew conveyance to the beach, circumventing any customs or law enforcement inspection. Most of the boats who brought the drugs to the platforms were shrimp boats, fishing boats. Everybody in the intelligence community knows this. Every legitimate investigation into the source of drugs in this country has led right to the doorstep of the CIA. George Bush has been a lifelong member of the CIA. He wasn't just the head of the CIA for a couple of years. He's been a member all his life. He's a member of the Skull and Bones, the Order, the Jason Society, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission, whose stated public goal is to destroy the sovereignty of this nation and bring the world together in a one world government. They have written it so many times. So how can we elect a president who belongs to an organization who states that he wants to do away with the sovereignty of nations, and then he takes an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution? I mean, there's something wrong there. It doesn't click, does it? And I hope that's not repeated. You know, when I first began what I was doing, I heard of a gentleman who was a Vietnam War veteran, a hero, who was talking about something that he learned in the Golden Triangle. Drugs being purchased by high-level American officials, but years ago. And I got on the bandwagon and helped him out. Started spreading his message. Then I found out that this man was the principal agent to the National Security Council for the Intelligence Support Agency of the Special Operations Division of the Department of Defense. You know what that is? That's Ollie North's boss. And now he's running for president on the Populist Party ticket. Gang, let me tell you something. You can never elect any of us who have ever served in any capacity in any intelligence organization ever to any office, period. And that includes me. Because you're never going to know your whole life whether you can trust any of us. Because anybody who served in any intelligence branch in this country was working for and toward the New World Order under the UN Participation Act and the UN Treaty signed by Harry Truman at the end of World War II. That's why and how all this is working. Under the full protection of the National Security Act. And drug cargoes are flown into this country every day labeled top secret. I wondered why Bo never named anybody that was participating now. And then I found out that he was the senior Army intelligence officer in Central America, and he's telling me he didn't know that we were bringing cocaine in on military aircraft from Central and South America? Doesn't compute, folks. If he was the head of military intelligence in Central America, he knew everything and was helping do it. We must grow up. You have to send one of you to office, not one of us. And even though I'm up here professing to be operating the best interests of this country, I have to tell you, you can never, ever trust that to be true. That's why I tell you, don't believe what I tell you. You go out and find out if it's true on your own. You go out and prove it wrong or prove it right, and if you prove it wrong, I want you to call me, because if I'm wrong, I want to know. I want to change it. What usually happens is they find out I'm right, and they become an ally. But you have to find it out yourself. You can never go on the assumption that what I'm telling you is the truth, or that what anybody else is telling you is the truth. And I'm going to tell you right here tonight, you elect Bo Greitz president of this country, and he's going to lock you up. primary method of control of any government or people is money. Money. Cash. I met with a man today at 2 o'clock who said he had some information he wanted to give me. Asking what kind of information it was, he told me. I asked him how he got that information, and he said money. He said he can get any information that I want. All we need is enough money. And he's right. Most people will sell their family for enough money, unfortunately. And maybe some families need to be sold, I don't know. But I knew exactly what he was talking about, because low-level personnel usually handle classified information, and they're usually not paid much. I always had to laugh when I found out how much security guards make. This guy's guarding millions of dollars of equipment and merchandise and inventory, and they're paying him $4.25 an hour. Man, I knew a secret when I learned that. I could have anything in there if I was willing to pay him 10. It's that simple. We lost this government in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was established. I hope everybody in here knows what the Federal Reserve is, and I'm sure that most people believe that it is an agency of the federal government. I'm going to tell you tonight that it is not. It is not an agency of the federal government. It is not an agency of Congress or of any other agency of government. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned corporation. The majority of stock is owned by European banking interests controlled by the House of Rothschild, which is the Bank of England. Understand that. Understand that the Council on Foreign Relations was established by its sister group, or parent group you might say, which is the Royal Institute of International Affairs in England. The Royal Institute of International Affairs is also called Chatham House. Chatham House is the elite club of British intelligence. The Council on Foreign Relations is an extension of British intelligence, is one of the highest levels of what I call the Illuminati. It was members of this elite group that before the Council on Foreign Relations was established used to meet in New York City as a dinner club. Nevertheless, they were about the same business. They established a group that met on Jekyll Island to bring about what is known today as the Federal Reserve banking system. This group was made up mostly of international bankers, all who owed allegiance to the Rothschild family, the House of Rothschild, the family that literally owns the country of England. And I'm not going to go into the history of that because it takes some time. The Federal Reserve is constitutionally improper, illegal. It's under the color of law. It was passed probably illegally. What they do, folks, is they've circumvented the Constitution, which says that a unit of money in the United States is called a dollar. And a dollar is a specific measurement of gold or silver coin only. And if paper is used in place, it must be redeemable for exactly $1 measurement of gold or silver coin. That's constitutional money. You can't get in trouble if you have that kind of money. Over the years, they took us off that kind of money. If you'll look in your pocket and pull out one of those dollar bills, you'll see that it says Federal Reserve Note. A note, by definition, is a piece of paper that says that somebody owes somebody else some money. It cannot be redeemed for anything. They have even taken the worth from the coins of this country. If you look at your coins, you'll see that they are no longer silver coins. They're what's called copper clad. They're copper with a thin layer of silver plating over them. Our money has no value whatsoever. It is worthless. When you use Federal Reserve notes, you're paying for something with an instrument of debt, which means you really haven't paid for what you bought. You haven't paid for it. You've given the guy a note that says somebody owes somebody some money. But who it is and how it's going to be collected is never specified, is it? Here's how it works. The United States government says to the Federal Reserve, we need $1 million. The Federal Reserve says, fine. Here it is, and it's issued in the form of credit. Where does this money come from, this $1 million? It comes right out of thin air as a bookkeeping error, a bookkeeping entry, it is an error, as a bookkeeping entry in a ledger. Literally, that's where it comes from. The money never existed. They don't take money out of a bank vault and give it to the federal government. They create it out of thin air. They make a bookkeeping entry that says there's $1 million was loaned to the federal government as credit. The credit is good at any Federal Reserve bank. How is this money paid? It's paid by check, which is then deposited in an account, and when that person wants to spend money, they write a check, don't they? That's how they get away with it, because you never find out that the money was never printed. That's why you were encouraged to use credit cards, debit cards, and checks to get the currency out of circulation so that you could never catch them stealing from you. That's why I can safely predict that the New World Order is going to have a cashless system where no cash will ever be used and everything will be by electronic transaction, done by computers. And you will either have a debit card or a tattoo. How do I know this? Not because it says it in the book of Revelations, not because somebody else told me to, but because the only way that they can keep creating wealth out of thin air and get you to buy it and steal from you is if they do away with cash altogether. It's just plain logic, folks. It's called using your intellect, which I was told at one time my IQ was 110, so it can't be that hard. It just can't be that hard. If I can do it with 110 IQ, everybody in here can do it. All of my predictions are based upon study, hard work, research, knowing what they need to do to continue their plan. And every one of them come true. As I said before, my goal is for none of them to come true. Because if I can get it down to where no predictions that I make come true, we're going to be in pretty good shape. I hope. The only thing I'll have to worry about is, what are you going to do at that point? Now, how are they stealing from us? It's simple. The money was never printed. So when the government pays for something, they're paying with nothing that exists. Not only that, but the federal government has to pay this money that they were loaned that doesn't exist back. Where does it come from? Taxes, folks. Not only do they have to pay that money back, but they have to pay interest on the money, which was never even created, not even out of thin air. That's why you keep getting poorer every year. That's why the middle class keeps shrinking. That's why the price of homes has to go up. That's why inflation must occur. Because when you create something from nothing, it creates inflation. When they blame inflation on an oil shortage, and everybody buys it, and everybody says, yeah, it's all because of those damn Arabs. It's a lie, it's a manipulation. It's because they have put out so much of nothing that you're spending in the form of credit that inflation must occur. Remember when all the housing prices went through the roof? Nobody had any trouble getting credit anywhere. That's why. If you wanted $200,000, all you do is walk down the street and ask for it, and you got it. And the guy that owned the home knew it, so he raised the price of his home to get some of the action himself. And pretty soon, everything went through the roof. That's what inflation really is. It's a manipulation of the money supply by introducing worthless money into the system. In the case of the Federal Reserve, it's done by issuing credit. Your taxes have to go up. They're going to go up, and they will always go up until you reach the level of poverty that they want you to be at. Because the interest has to come out of the sweat of your work, because it doesn't exist anywhere else. Does everybody follow me? Is anyone lost? It's important you understand that, because you must understand this. And the destruction of the Federal Reserve is the first step in the road to freedom. The first step. It must happen. There is in Congress now a bill to audit the Federal Reserve and prove that they have created money out of thin air. You must call your congressman, you must write your congressman, you must not procrastinate, and you must demand that he support and pass this bill. You must do that. Once that's done, written into the legislation that established the Federal Reserve is the clause that we may buy it back at any time we so desire for $1,500,000. That's cheap compared to the national debt, because if we buy back the Federal Reserve, the national debt will vanish instantly because we will owe ourselves, you see. Does everybody understand that? Now there's another way too. We can audit them, prove that they're criminals, arrest them all, and nationalize the Federal Reserve and don't even pay the $1,500,000 for it. I would prefer to do it that way, because I think all those bastards need to be in jail. I really do. They've been stealing from us. They've been destroying this country. It's the same as if you don't have any money. So you come to me and say, Bill, I need $1,000. So I say, fine, you got it. And I give you a piece of paper that says, I got $1,000 in your name. And you go out and you buy a car with that $1,000, with that note, because that's what it is, it's a note. You go buy a car with that note. Do you own the car? No, you don't. Did you have any money? No, you didn't. But you got to pay me back $1,000, don't you, plus interest. And you know what? I didn't have it. I didn't have it, folks. But you got to pay me back $1,000 plus interest, and I didn't have it. See, you could have done the same thing. You could have wrote a phony piece of paper, too. So why'd you come to me? Why aren't we doing that? Did you know that your congressmen know all about this? They sold you out. You think they care? No, because the people that own the Federal Reserve are rich and you're not. And they know that if they play the game, they'll be taken care of. Not by you. By the rich people who own them, who have them in their pocket. Are we really so stupid to think that somebody's going to spend $300 million to run for an office that only pays $50,000 a year or $80,000 a year? How dumb are we? How stupid are we? I mean, when you really get into it, you know, some of you are going to walk out of here feeling really low. I did for years. discovered in the documentation when I worked for the United States Navy in the Office of Naval Intelligence destroyed my life for years. When I discovered all this, when I discovered who really shot President Kennedy, when I knew what the real reality of the world was all about, my life went to shit. And I jumped in a bottle of booze. And I thought that I could really drink this away. I thought that I could make it all go away by ignoring it. I thought that somebody else would take care of the problem. But it doesn't work that way. And I didn't get my life back together until I began doing what I was supposed to do, and that's what I'm doing tonight. And you're going to find that once you have this knowledge, it becomes a burden, because now you're responsible to do something about it. And if you don't, your life's going to go to shit just like mine did. And you're not going to be able to live with yourself until you begin to do what you're supposed to do, and that's become responsible. It is to live and walk in a state of divine grace. And that means nothing more than being responsible for yourself, your family, your people, your country, and the world. It means understanding that the World Bank built the road into the Amazon so that the people in Brazil who were poor would burn the forest, so that you would scream for more control, so that they can't burn the forest. And that control will be the New World Order. Because no sovereign nation state can tell another sovereign nation state what to do. The answer is no more sovereign nation states. The answer is the New World Order. Everything is screaming for control, and everything has been engineered by these secret societies to bring about synthesis and, thesis, antithesis, which will result in a clash, causing you to scream for the solution that they wanted all along. Understand that when big, giant corporations pollute the atmosphere and the land, it's done on purpose. Understand that. Understand that Detroit has had for many years the plan to make a very clean engine that would go a long way. Understand that a hydrogen engine has been developed for many, many years, but is being withheld from the public because it doesn't pollute enough to ask you to demand for total control, to save the world from pollution. Does everybody follow me? God, I hope you do. This is a spiritual thing, as I said the other night. This is a battle. It is a war. It's in its final stages. And whoever wins is going to be the victor for a long time. We're playing for high stakes, playing for your very soul. You're playing for the future of mankind. This country, what we have here, is not possessed and has never been possessed by anyone else in the history of the world. No peoples have ever had the freedom that we have. No peoples in the world have ever had the opportunity to truly govern themselves. Never. Anywhere. And no other people in the world have flubbed it so miserably as we are flubbing it. We're flushing ourselves right down the toilet. That's what's happening. This country was founded to bring prophecy to reality. And it's going to happen. How many of you know about a spacecraft called Galileo? Okay, that means a lot of you don't. How many of you know that in the book of Revelations it says that in the end, when all the prophecy comes to pass, the moon will disappear from the heavens and there will be no more night? How many of you know that? Well, I know it, and I read it again before I came down here to make sure that it was still there. And it was still there. In 1957, a study was conducted by a secret group of scholars called the Jason Group. They're administered by the Miner Corporation. They are the biggest, best brains in this country. All of the Nobel Prize winners of this country are in their group, or most of them, I should say. And they, along with scientists from other countries, met at Huntsville, Alabama in 1957 and decided that we're in for some deep trouble. They predicted that the population would double between 1957 and 1990. And then again after that, and then again after that, and again after that. They predicted that we are in the downward swing of a warming period in the geological history of this world, which means that we're going into an ice age, not a desert period as you've been told. That this had to be kept from people. Because you have to understand that an ice age will destroy civilization as we know it. Can't feed people if you can't raise animals and you can't grow food, can you? That's why they've been telling you that it's getting warmer every year. It's not. And all you got to do to prove it to yourself is go down and buy this year's, not the new edition that just came out, but this year's edition, the last one. One just came out right now. Don't get that. Get the one that was already out. In the Old Farmer's Almanac, you will see a little article in there about the release by the Agricultural Department through the U.S. Government Printing Office of the map of what plants can grow in what area, and they slipped. They said the reason this map had to be changed is the average climate is getting colder, and some plants can't be grown in areas where they could be grown previously. And that's the truth of the matter. Project Galileo is a spacecraft that has been fired off. It's already on its way to Jupiter. Does anybody in here know what Jupiter is? Yes? It's a planet. What's it made up of? What gases? Who said that? I heard it over here. Hydrogen, what else? Helium. You know what's really coincidental about this? Jupiter is made up of hydrogen and helium and some other trace gases in the exact same proportions as these gases exist in our sun. Jupiter, as any astronomy textbook will tell you, is a baby star that has never been lit off. Galileo is going to light off Jupiter, and we are going to be a binary solar system. Now, I really know I'm stretching your ability to absorb information at this moment, and that's okay. Just remember, file it in the question mark drawer under Cooper's Crazy, but when you go out of here, you go check and see if I'm right or not. In this spacecraft, it is carrying 49.7 pounds of weapon-grade plutonium. NASA says that the plutonium is used for batteries to power the spacecraft. If that's true, and the spacecraft is only good until December 1999 when it's going to plunge into the center of Jupiter, why did they use weapons-grade plutonium when weapons-grade plutonium has a half-life of over 20,000 years? Does not compute. I sent to NASA and got back the whole kit describing Galileo, everything. And guess how this plutonium is arrayed in the spacecraft? Two banks opposite each other with a vacuum in the middle. What is that the configuration of? Atomic bomb. I heard it from all over here. You're absolutely right. That is the configuration of an atomic bomb, and plutonium is exactly what they use in an atomic bomb. Why are they going to do this? To short circuit and do away with the cycle of ice ages in our future forever so that humanity never has to worry about it ever again. And why are they running around in the New Age movement warning everybody about earth changes and the water's going to rise and all this kind of stuff? Because for those of enough who are smart enough to listen, will go to high ground to live. Because the ice caps will melt and the water will rise, but we'll never have another threat to humanity like an ice age ever again in our future. This really sounds way out, doesn't it? until you realize that Arthur C. Clarke is a member of these secret societies. Arthur C. Clarke is also a scientist, and he wrote about everything that I'm talking about in the book 2001 and 2010. Only he blamed it on aliens. It ain't aliens, folks. Pogo said, "I have found the enemy and they are us." And he are right. That's exactly what's going to happen. Now, it's going to happen according to NASA. The last moon that Galileo is going to photograph, it's going to photograph all the moons of Jupiter. Why? We've already got millions of photographs of the moons of Jupiter. But because when Jupiter lights off, it's going to be the first time that moons could become planets. And they want a record of this. In December of 1999, its orbit will decay because the last moon it photographs will be Io, the closest moon to Jupiter. And this spacecraft will plunge into the center of Jupiter, where the tremendous pressure that it encounters will crush it exactly as an implosion detonating device on a nuclear weapon, an atomic bomb, and light Jupiter, and it will become our second sun. That's what's going to happen, and that's what all this other crap about Earth changes and water rising and all this other stuff is all about. It's for those who will listen to hear and be warned. We will be able to grow food in places you never dreamed of before. We'll be able to handle the population problem for a little while longer and give them a chance to deal with it. And if we're successful in dealing with all these problems and can check the population so it doesn't continue to double all the time, then the human race might have a chance. We go about our daily business tripping over door sills and everything, thinking that we have an infinite supply of everything here. But if you look at a picture of Earth from the moon, you'll find that it's not infinite. We don't have enough trees on this planet to double the population again. There's not enough cattle to furnish leather for all of us to have shoes if this population doubles again. There's barely enough clean, pure water left for any of us to drink right now. What the hell are we going to do when the population doubles again? Where are we going to get the food to feed all these people? That's what I mean when I say that I am not in complete disagreement with every one of their goals, but I am damn sure in disagreement with their method of getting there and leaving us out of the equation. You see, one of the reasons we're so stupid and ignorant is because they won't teach us what the hell the real truth is. And I dislike that intensely. Because I may have an IQ of 110, but I think I'm capable of understanding some things and making decisions and participating. And my IQ may even be higher now. I don't know. That was back when I was in high school, I think, that test was taken. It's even possible that it could be lower. You know? But I'm trying. Give me a chance. That's what I want. I want to participate. I don't want to throw this grand experiment in the trash can. You've all heard it's not over till the fat lady sings. So when they tell me it's all over, don't fight it, you can't win, I say, well, you know, it's only not over because these people don't know about it. Maybe if I tell them, maybe we have a chance. You had your hand up. She wants to know how the AIDS virus ties in with population control. They tried very hard after they determined that there was a population problem to get us to listen and to use birth control. Birth control pills were never developed until they understood there was a problem. They tried to educate the whole world to the concept of zero population growth. Remember that? I remembered everybody was talking about zero population growth. Every cocktail party, everywhere you went, they were talking about a book called The Population Bomb. But it went away. People quit talking about it. People forgot about it. And people are still having babies just as fast as they can crawl into back seats of Chevrolets. And maybe that's why Chevrolets were built. Yes? You missed the point. The half-life of weapons-grade plutonium is over 20,000 years. It could power this spacecraft for 20,000 years and still be the most poisonous substance in the universe and still detonate an atomic bomb. Everybody understand what half-life means? It means that it decays to half its original radioactive level in that period of time. I understand your point, but it's not valid in this instance. Supposedly, the spacecraft is running off the heat caused by the decay of the radioactive material, or the heat caused by the radiation radiated from the radioactive material. Even after 20,000 years, it's still going to be hot, can still be used as a weapon, can still detonate an atomic bomb. It's only got till December of 1999. Yes, ma'am? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak louder, please? Well, first place, I don't know any more about the Challenger disaster than anybody else in here does. And depletion of the ozone layer, I believe we all know what the causes of that are. But I have to tell you something. These people don't want to die any more than you do. If they're telling you that the ozone layer is being depleted and they're allowing it to continue to be depleted, it's a manipulation, it's a lie. They know that if there's no ozone layer, they can't live here either. You have to be able to use your common sense and understand that it doesn't take a whole lot of brains to figure a lot of this stuff out. They tell us that the atmosphere on Mars is only 1/100th as dense as Earth's. In other words, a 1% atmosphere compared to ours, yet they lowered the Martian probe to the surface with a parachute. Bullshit. And the Martian probe, when it's sitting there, while the announcer is telling us there's no moisture in the atmosphere on Mars, is sending out pictures of ground fog. Now we get up from the TV set after we just watched a whole gigantic bank of ground fog move across the camera's view in the atmosphere of Mars, and we go and tell our neighbor, oh, we know there's no atmosphere, there's no water in the atmosphere of Mars, because NASA just told me. Well, somebody lied. Either the picture was lying or NASA was lying. Which do you think it is? Do you know that NASA has on the drawing boards a winged aircraft, propeller driven by a hydrazine motor to fly in the atmosphere of Mars that's 1% as dense as this atmosphere here? Bullshit. It's a lie. They're lying to us. They're giving us pictures of astronauts on the moon that are lies. Either those pictures were not taken on the moon, or the moon has an atmosphere. Why? Because in the dark places where there should be no light in a vacuum, and can't be any light in a vacuum, you can see detail, lots of detail. I have a degree in photography. I know the resolution power of the film that they used cannot pick up any detail in a dark shadow area in a vacuum. It's impossible. cannot be done. Yet you see detail in the shadows cast by the astronauts in the pictures of the Apollo astronauts on the moon. They show them walking along, kicking up dust. They show the lunar rover running around, and up from its tires, dust is springing. Dust cannot exist in a vacuum. It is impossible. If you don't believe me, go get a bell jar, put some dust in there, pump the air out, and shake it and see what happens. There will be no dust in that jar. It will all cling together as a clod. They're lying to us. But what is it that they're hiding? Why are they lying to us? Did we not really go to the moon at all? Or did we go there and find something else they don't want us to see? The photographs are fake if there's no atmosphere on the moon. NASA is printing in books published by NASA, printed by the U.S. government printing office, thousands of photographs of alien artifacts and anomalous material on the moon that should not be there. And NASA denies it. Yet anybody with a magnifying glass can see it in any of the books that they've published in the pictures. Now that means one of two things. Either NASA wants us to believe that there's extraterrestrials that don't exist and they faked all those photographs, or they're letting those photographs out intentionally so that we'll begin to guess that there really are extraterrestrials up there. You see, because I learned a lesson a long time ago, I won't even look at a photograph if it's not a NASA photograph in a book published by the U.S. government printing office, because that's the only way I can keep them from calling me a liar. I used to go down and get them right out of their tubs. I mean, a NASA photograph, right out of their place. Buy it. And hold it up and show it to people. They call me a liar. This is not a NASA photograph. Prove it. You faked it. You made that photograph in your dark room or something. And because I'm a photographer, it was easy to make people believe that I could do that. So now I go buy, right off the bookshelf, NASA publications printed by the U.S. government printing office, and I get out a high-powered magnifying glass, and you can do it too. Yes, sir?
I have two questions. One is, do you have any practical advice for homeowners fearing home mortgages?
Yeah, you're screwed.
Have you ever?
Yes.
And number two, second part of that, would you recommend this time buying metals?
Okay, let me address your first question. Number one, nobody in this room owns anything that they think they own. In 1938, the United States declared bankruptcy. Congress declared bankruptcy. You can find this in the records. To be able to function as a government, they had to borrow money to make the government work. They pledged as collateral for the loan, which has never been repaid, folks, all the property of the United States of America. And what is the United States of America? We, the people. You became a resource. Look at your birth certificate. And while we're at it, why do you need a birth certificate when I see damn well that you were born? At the top of it, it says Department of Human Resources. It is you that produce the wealth that is pledged as collateral for the loan. That's why you can't get a deed to your house. That's why none of you have a title to your car. How many of you think you have a title to your car? When you get home, read it, and you'll see that it says Certificate of Title. The state holds the title as collateral for the loan. All the assets of the United States of America are pledged to the bankers. That's why I've always said, and it is true, when the New World Order becomes a fact, there will be a redistribution of wealth. You don't own a deed to your house. You own a warranty deed. That's what they give you, isn't it? You know what a warranty deed means? It's a guarantee that a deed exists, but you don't have it. The state retains the deed. Yes, Robin?
Isn't there a way to get an allodial title without paying for your house if it's sold?
You can get an allodial patent deed, an allodial patent title to anything that you have purchased if you want to go through the long, incredible maze of obstacles and hardships that will be put in your way to do it, but you can do it. But yes, it would. You see, one of the proofs that you don't own your own home is the taxes that you pay on it. If you owned it, if you had an original allodial patent deed to your home, they cannot charge you taxes, because the taxes on your home is really a rental payment to use that home until its real owner comes to get it. If you don't believe me, remember that you may have a $200,000 home, but you just miss a $200 tax payment, and see how long you keep that home. Under the Constitution, they can't take your home unless they give you just compensation. I guarantee you, you will not get a penny. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? You don't own it. That's why you won't get a penny. You don't own it. You don't own anything. You don't even own yourself. You are a resource, a human resource. Yes, sir? No. No, they did not. But in my work on the briefing team, we worked with a lot of photographs that had been interpreted, and over a 3-year period of time, I became somewhat adept at understanding a little bit of the art, but I'm no expert by any means. Yes, sir? Freemasonry is in a pyramidal organizational structure with degrees of initiation. You don't learn the ultimate secrets till you get to the top. The 33rd degree is split into 2 parts. One part doesn't know anything about any of this, and neither do anybody below it. The other part begins the lower rung of the degrees of the Illuminati. And we have identified 64 degrees so far. Yes?
Could you locate or define the 3 locations that I understand that there are detention centers that have been built in Arizona?
One is at Wickenburg. He wants to know where the 3 detention centers are that were built in the state of Arizona. It's in my book. I forget which chapter, but they're in the book. One is in Wickenburg. Yes.
Just briefly comment to the rest of the people here. There's a little town, there's a relatively small town called Perryville, and I have traveled past there many, many times in my life, and I'm sure many of you have. And there's been just a small prison complex, maybe twice the size of Kmart, perhaps, that has blossomed unbelievably in the last short period of time. If you drive by and note your odometer, when you first see the first confinement apartment, or whatever we want to call it, you go 1.2 miles before you leave the last. This is astonishing. The next time any of you are taking I-10 and go past there, verify what I'm saying. It is astonishing, and how quickly that has grown.
What he's talking about is the New World Order is setting up already in this country and in other countries detention centers, concentration camps for people who have mental illnesses. Some of these are going to be on abandoned military bases, and this was passed in a law, Public Law 100-690, which is published in my book also, which states that military installations can be used for mental treatment centers. Now, why do they have to be mental treatment centers? Because patriotism and nationalism in the New World Order will be considered to be a mental illness and is not compatible with the new nation state, the one world government. Does everybody follow? These people will be re-educated, brainwashed, whatever it takes, and if they can't, they'll just be executed. They're not fooling around. This is the culmination of everything. This is why I'm trying to tell you it's so important that you wake up. Most of this is documented in my book. I've been told that this is the most thoroughly documented book and contains more suppressed and hidden information that's ever been published in the history of the world. I'm very proud of that. It's also the only book in the world that comes with a guarantee. If you think you got took when you buy this book for any reason at all, you don't even have to tell me. Just write me a little note, paste it on the front of here, and send it to me, and I'll send you your money back. I don't do anything unless I can put my name on it and back it 1,000%, period. And I mean that. So far, nobody's ever done it. I don't know why. There must be somebody who's not happy with that book, because it's just the law of averages that somebody will be. Yes, sir?
Yeah, Bill, what is your overall sense of the alien participation?
If extraterrestrials are real, then they have been controlling us since the beginning of our history, and you can find reference to it throughout the written history of all peoples of the world and even in the Bible. If they're not real, then it's the biggest hoax in the history of the world to create the alien threat, to unite all humanity in a one-world government to face that threat. And what we find written in history are accounts of angels or paranormal phenomena that we can't explain. You see, because extraterrestrial intervention in history, written in history, is an interpretation of what was written. But it's pretty hard to interpret it any other way when you hear people talking about and writing about gods descending from the skies and craft that they describe that resembles exactly what we're seeing in the sky right now. It's tough to ignore that. But there is no proof anywhere in this world that extraterrestrials are real other than somebody say so that they spoke to one or saw one.
Do you think the ones at the underground bases are creation?
Well, you know what's really suspicious about these little gray dudes that are running around with the bug eyes is all through the history of the world, every description of every encounter with any kind of any extraterrestrial being described as such, they've always looked exactly like you and I. Up until the time when we had the capability to do genetic engineering in the laboratory, and then up pops these little gray dudes with big bug eyes. That's incredible to me. I mean, why is there never any mention of them before that particular point? And I happen to know this for a fact, that whatever you perceive as the state of art, the state of technology, the state of medicine in the public realm, they're at least 50 to 100 years ahead of that in the black projects in secret. I know that they have the capacity to clone a human being right now in a laboratory. Yes? Stand up, Robin, and talk real loud, please.
You remember in George Andrews' book, Extraterrestrial Phenomena, remember the picture of a little creature under that point, it was small and it was found in a part of the United States, person was returned, condition was very infant on the figure of a being, just don't everything lined up.
I remember that photograph very well, but you also have to understand that that's represented as being a mummy that has never been dissected or medically examined. It could be a lump of clay that someone has, you know. What I'm trying to say is it has not been presented, nor has it been treated as proof, nor has it been examined by anyone who could say that this is not a human mummy. What I'm trying to say is we've got to quit believing what we're told. Because we see a picture in a book does not mean that the picture is a true representation of what it's purported to be. Yes, sir. Ezekiel is one place in the Bible that could be interpreted as an extraterrestrial visitation to the earth. Another one could be Jacob's ladder, where he saw beings climbing up into the sky. You know, I mean, there's all kinds of references that can be interpreted as extraterrestrial beings, contact, landings, whatever. But it doesn't mean that that's what it literally is. One of the records in history that's very hard to ignore are the Vimana scrolls from India, which literally outline the history of peoples that came from the sky in ships, that landed, that established colonies, that fought wars. The wars are described as atomic blasts, and the effects that had on people that lingered, their hair fell out, are the symptoms of radiation poisoning. It's incredible what is written in the history of the world. And I don't believe that it's all a bunch of bullshit either. But I'm going to say this again. There is no proof of an extraterrestrial presence or being anywhere that would stand up for 1 second in any court of law in this land. I thought I had proof at one point. I have drawers and drawers and drawers and drawers of documents, and top secret documents, and things that have been leaked to me, and photographs. And I got 3 Superior Court judges from the state of California to come to my home and take this documentation with them and tell me if I had any proof of extraterrestrial presence on this earth. You know what they told me? Said I didn't have one document, one photograph, one shred of evidence in my entire collection that would stand up for 1 second in any court of law as proof. None of it's certified. You can't really pinpoint the origin of any of it. Even when it comes from the Freedom of Information Act, its origin and truthfulness is questionable. It's incredible. These judges were leveling with me. They wanted to help me. If there was any way that I could prove it, they were going to help me prove it. And I've got some of the best documentation that exists anywhere. And it's no good. Now, if they were really visiting this earth, don't you think it's odd that we don't have one shred of proof after thousands of years? I think that's odd. Probably intentional. Look how the government treats this. They let information leak. They let people like me see reams of documents saying that there's extraterrestrial visitation, and then they deny it. That's like your neighbor. He comes home late one night and you see him carrying a coffin on his shoulder, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and you see him looking around to see if anybody's watching, and he slides it down the coal chute into his basement. What are you going to think? You think he killed somebody and he's hiding them in the basement, don't you? And the next day he reinforces that because he denies that he carried a coffin on his shoulder across the yard and put it down the coal chute, doesn't he? And you say, now I know he killed somebody because I saw him. It's not my America. Yes?
What did you think you saw then? That ship that comes up out of the water that flies off?
I saw exactly what I described to you. Now you have to understand that if these secret societies have been withholding information and knowledge and technology from the masses of us for thousands of years, they could have had a nuclear submarine in the year 1000 maybe. Who knows? How many of you read Jules Verne's books? You really think he dreamed all that? Every single thing he wrote about became scientific fact, and none of it turned out to be baloney. You think he dreamed it? I don't think so. I think Jules Verne had some conduit to withheld knowledge. Now, I'm not saying they had a nuclear submarine in the year 1000. I'm saying that it's possible. Look, in 1897, all across this country, and you can verify it in the newspapers in your own town, there was a huge airship sighted flying across the country, all over the place. It landed in several states, and the occupants talked to people. And they were dressed exactly like the people dressed who lived in that time. And in one place they landed, somebody asked them, you know, what are you doing? We're flying my uncle's airship. He's an eccentric inventor. Where are you going? Oh, we're going to Illinois, or wherever the hell it was. Brad Steiger can tell you this story better than I can. And when they got up there, somebody asked them where they're going. They said that they came from Texas, where they had landed the first place, and that they were going to fight in the Spanish-American War, which wasn't until sometime in the future. Now, this is in the newspapers. I mean, these things can be accounted for. In one place they landed, the guy traded the guy a sack of steer manure for some food. The people in the airship gave him some food. You know what it turned out to be? Buckwheat cakes. So you know damn well they didn't come from Venus. I mean, it was the same recipe as those people made in their own house, buckwheat cakes. Now, let me tell you something. If this hidden technology can do what I've seen it do, it's a time machine. And if it's a time machine, the events described in history could have been us or someone in the future utilizing that time machine to engineer the future. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm telling you this. I have seen these things demonstrate characteristics that can only be attributed to a craft that is able to warp space. And if it can warp space, if you know anything about the theory of relativity and Einstein's work, you know that if you can warp space, you can warp time. And that if you can travel from here to here, by effectively pulling this point to you, you can go forward or backward in time by the same mechanism. I believe that they've perfected the unified field theory in secret, and that they plugged in the equation of gravity, and that they know exactly what it is. I happen to know for a fact that we have planes flying that are powered by fusion reactors. I've seen them fly. I know that the pilot in these planes does not breathe air. They breathe oxygenated fluorocarbon liquids so that they don't get the bends, they don't have to worry about compression and decompression, and the effects of the G-forces or gravitational forces of rapid acceleration are nullified, because it's as if they're acting upon a complete body of water rather than a body that contains air and dissolved gases. And don't dismiss this, because we experimented years ago when I was the head of the mixed gas deep saturation diving department of the College of Oceaneering with oxygenated fluorocarbons. We didn't just pull that out of the air. We got the initial idea from the space program. Yes, sir.
Sorry to ask you again, but in the event that we become a cashless society, we use the present methods now, for example,
Only if you're going to try and withdraw from the system and participate in what will be called a black market or an underground illegal bartering system, then it would be useful to have the smallest denomination of gold or silver coin that you can get, preferably gold. Bullion would be useless because nobody would know what the pure gold content of the bullion was, but everybody knows and recognizes Krugerrands and other gold coins. And as long as you don't try to shave off any, they'll accept them. They'll always be valuable, yes. It's already happening. Crane Paper Company has been rolling out the paper for months now. The new printing presses and the facility for printing the money has already been built in Fort Worth, Texas. They are printing. The money has already started being exchanged on the East Coast and is working its way westward. First will be $50 and $100 bills. The world first heard about it in my newsletter way back at the beginning of this year. Yes.
I think some people don't believe the truth is why they have some secret society, and I know there's one that gets together at noon once a month, and the noon people meditate on the leaders and the people of the world, try to get them to raise their consciousness to what's going on, and they do this, so all of them are not, bad people, but some people, they won't believe the truth to show it to them,
I didn't say they were bad.
Yeah, that's why they have some.
They firmly believe that they're doing what's right for humanity. They believe that. Have you ever seen anybody in your life that believed that they were doing the wrong thing? Even murderers justify their deed to themselves. Nobody does something if they truly in their heart believe that they're doing the wrong thing. They believe sincerely that what they're doing is the only hope for the future of mankind. This is what you have to understand. but so does everybody on this earth, is what you also have to understand. There's not a person in this room doesn't believe that they're doing the best that they know how to do for the future of humanity. What I'm trying to say is not that everything that they're doing is wrong. It's that we're not allowed to participate. That's wrong. Our fate is being decided by someone else. That's wrong. They will decide who will live and who will die. That's wrong, in my estimation. Maybe I'm wrong.
Then you know.
My place is with the people. That's where I belong. That's where I believe we all belong. You see, I'm not in the business of farming, and I don't want a damn herd of cattle. I'm sorry. And I don't like being called one. I don't participate in that. Someone who believes that they're smarter than me and are the only ones who have a right to determine my future is my enemy. Period. You're going to have to prove to me that I am a dumb animal before I will accept any of that or would join any order that believed that. It's wrong. We must be educated. We must be taught how to use our intellect, and then we must be allowed to do it. And only if that has been done and we fail, then would I submit to someone else's control. But if we fail to wake up and do the right things and use our intellect, I will tell you, we will prove them right. And if we prove them right, then I will be forced to join them. And so would anyone else who is intelligent in this world. You would be forced to join them if we prove them right. Because someone has to make sure that the human race survives on this planet. I'm not talking from a religious point of view. I'm talking for common sense. Plain old ordinary common sense tells you that. You have to understand that. But we have to have the chance first. Now they say they've given us the chance when they founded this nation and we blew it. Sure, we blew it. But the real knowledge has been withheld from us. So that, I don't consider that a chance. I'm trying to wake you up to some of the real knowledge, and I'll tell you right now, there's so much of it that I don't even know that what I know is an infinitesimal part of what there is to know. That's what I'm learning. The more I study this, the more I realize how ignorant I am. I'm no longer stupid, but I'm still ignorant. It just never ends. Yes, Daniel.
Could you please comment one more time on just something I often read last year? It seems to me that probably 95% of the information they say these things are similar, yet there kind of seems to be some type of bitterness between the two, and as far as people who are not correct or a little not correct. Is that necessary?
There's no bitterness. I'm for truth, and he's for deception. The Phoenix Journals are really written by Doris and E.J. Ecker. They're two con people that have a police record as long as my arm. They say that they're receiving this information from some space cadet named Hatton through a shortwave radio, who also at times claims to be God, Jesus, Sananda, and who else? Ashtar. Do you really think Jesus is going to communicate with us through a shortwave radio? I mean, that's all it takes for you to understand that what's in those journals is bullshit. But if you need more, most of it is copied verbatim from other people and is said to originate from this space cadet called Hatton. In Spacegate, The Veil Removed, the first 45 pages of that book is copied word for word, verbatim from a paper I wrote in May of 1989 called The Secret Government. The Phoenix Journals weren't published until November of 1989, just in case you think I copied it from them. And I could go on and on and on. Lindsey Williams' tapes have been copied verbatim. Eustace Mullins's books have been copied verbatim. If there were such a thing as ascended masters, they could at least use their own words. Why would they copy from some insignificant human such as I?
Another source of information that they're copying on, you said at least they're helping
No, 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 no. We must go from a basis of truth. If one part of it is a lie, it must be rejected, no matter what it is. If you find one part of what I say is a lie, you must reject what I am saying. You must.
When you talked about earlier how you study all the different sources, you got to read that.
You can read it fine, as long as you understand, and you should, that it's coming from a point of deception. I've read all of them because I want to know what the enemy's doing. His logo tells me that he is a member of the Illuminati, and thus his intent is to deceive. The message of the Phoenix Journals is it's all over, there's nothing you can do. It is so bad now that the only thing you can do is liquidate all your assets, send me the money, I'll buy gold and store it for you. I wish you luck. Send me the money. I'll buy gold, give you half and keep half. I mean, that's a better deal than he's offered you. Yeah. With Noriega, nothing's going on. He's sitting in Florida enjoying a very comfortable existence in a nice, beautiful office. Call anybody in the world he wants to. He has television, movies. Yes?
How about Judge 13 and Ted Kennedy's
You mean what?
Judge 13.
Mm-hmm. Ted Kennedy? JFK? John F. Kennedy was killed by the driver of his car, who turned in the seat and fired point blank into his head with an assassination pistol that was manufactured